Half of you said that invisibility broke your heart, and half of you said it set you free. And honestly, the problem was never really invisibility. It's that we spent decades being visible for the wrong reasons. Let's talk about it. So in my last video, I talked about the moment that I realized that I had become invisible. But if you're new here, this stands completely on its own. That video wasn't about disappearing or shrinking. It was about naming a shift that happens to so many of us as we get older. And, then it really got interesting because the comments came in like well over 1,000 of them. And some were heartbreaking, some were hilarious, and some were deeply vulnerable. And reading them, I realized, something important. We're all living in the same landscape. We just arrived there from different directions. So today I want to answer the bigger question that your comments raised. What do we actually lose? And what do we finally gain when the world stops seeing us, the way it used to? Well, the first thing I noticed was there was this emotional divide. Half of you said invisibility just felt like a gut punch, like a sudden shift that no one prepared you for. And then the other half said, I've felt invisible my whole life. And here's the thing, both groups are right. And neither group was really talking about beauty. You were talking about value and who gets it, who's denied it, and who grows up believing that it must be earned. A lot of us, myself included, were raised to be marketable, not beautiful, not extraordinary, just acceptable in a system that graded girls on how well we played the part. When I was younger, I learned quickly, that attention came when I hit that perfect formula. Makeup, check. Tiny body, check, even if that meant nothing but slim fast shakes instead of meals. Cute top, check. Mini skirt, maybe that was extra credit. And I wasn't trying to be beautiful because I thought I was. I was trying because that's what we were all taught mattered. And, for many of us, our existence was shaped by it. And so when that kind of visibility fades, it can feel like a loss, of course. And not because you think you're special, but because you were trained to associate attention with safety and value and relevance. And many of you said the same thing. And a whole another theme that came up, there was the idea that if a woman goes natural, gray hair, minimal makeup, she's not taking care of herself. And let's be honest, choosing not to perform beauty labor does not equal a lack of grooming. It simply means opting out. Dyeing your hair or wearing makeup can be, beautiful forms of self-expression, but not doing them doesn't make you less cared for or less worthy. And then there were the women who said that they never had pretty privilege and that they were never looked at, or maybe that they have always been invisible. And per many of those women, aging didn't take anything away from them. It actually removed pressure, and they felt like, that they lived outside the spotlight from the beginning. So no one demanded that they perform, femininity to earn approval, and aging felt like a kind of freedom to them. Reading those comments, something really struck me too. So many women said, I was never pretty, or they said I was always invisible. But compared to what? Compared to who? We didn't come into the world believing that we weren't beautiful. Someone taught us that. A culture taught us that. And beauty standards, they change every decade, every generation, every country, every industry. In the 60s, the ideal was Twiggy, and in the 90s it was Cindy Crawford, and in the Renaissance period, fuller figures were even celebrated. Different cultures value different features, different noses and cheekbones and skin tones and body sizes. There's never been one correct version of beauty. So sometimes when a woman says, I was never pretty, what she often means is I didn't match the template of my era. And that is not the same thing as lacking beauty. And it absolutely doesn't mean that you were ever less deserving of being seen. Your comments made one thing painfully clear. Whether you were praised or ignored or somewhere in between, Women are taught from girlhood that our worth is tied to how we look. Pretty privilege, no privilege, some privilege, it all comes from the same, cultural script. So when visibility shifts as we age, which it absolutely does, it shakes something deeper than appearance. It can shake our identity. And that's why invisibility feels emotional. Not because we miss looking younger, but because, we are confronting the very truth that we were valued for the wrong reasons to begin with. And one of the things I talked about was the gaze. And what I meant by that was a lifelong habit that so many of us developed, like constantly scanning for approval. Do you see me? Do you like me? Am I acceptable? And that started to change for me when I stopped chasing it. And I wish so much that I had known sooner that the things that I obsessed over, the weight, the clothes, the makeup, they were not the kind of attention, and they didn't bring the type of people that I actually needed. When society stops seeing us as we get older, we lose being instantly recognized as worth paying attention to. And doors that open simply because of youth, that's gone. We lose the illusion that visibility equals value. It's okay to grieve those things. It's human. And it's not vanity driven, and it is not shallow. You learned this without even realizing that you were learning it. But loss isn't the whole story, because so many women also said, I have never felt more free. And when the world stops evaluating your face and your body and your clothes, you start to feel something, that you may not have felt since childhood. You start to feel like yourself. And, women spoke up and they said, I don't wear makeup anymore. I dress for comfort. I feel calmer. I'm not trying to impress anyone. And I'm finally living. And that's the quiet revolution. Invisibility doesn't mean we stop existing. It means we just stop with the performing. We stop trying to please. And once that happens, then we can show up in our own lives, more fully than ever. And maybe invisibility, maybe it isn't the tragedy that we were taught to fear. Maybe it's the turning point. Maybe it's the moment that we stop being defined by how the world sees us, and finally, define ourselves. And in those comments, I saw grief and freedom. I saw loss and I saw clarity. And there were two truths side by side. But underneath all of it was this message: I'm still here, and I matter for reasons that have nothing to do with being looked at. And honestly, that to me feels like power. So thank you truly for everyone who shared your story. You shaped this video, and I hope that the space continues to be somewhere where women, in the second half of life can feel seen and heard and understood, and most of all valued for who we actually are. So please feel free to join us here. I would just love to have you. There is sure a lot more to talk about. Thanks for watching. See you next time.